I do this full time. This is not my side project. This is not my, something fun to do. And there are people who pay and support their families based off of the work that we do here. And so when you start recognizing that level of responsibility, I was burnt out because I was trying to have one foot in my agency and one foot still in my past, in essence.
Tune in as we give flowers to Black men and women making waves in the audio industry. I'm your host, Sidney Evans, and this is Beyond the Threshold. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of Beyond the Threshold. I'm your host, Sidney Evans, an award-winning audio editor and producer. For those of you who don't know, on this show, I interview Black men and women working in the audio industry to highlight the lessons and experiences it takes to achieve success in the field. So, quick story before we get into the nitty-gritty of the episode. Back in 2021, this is when I was working at Frequency Media. I think I just got an email one day about someone wanting me to speak and lead a audio engineering panel at a upcoming event. So I'm not sure. I don't even know if I actually talked to the today's guest directly or for somebody from the team. But I hopped on the call with them. They said they found out what I do and were interested in me to come to lead the panel. So I'm thinking it's kind of like we have this group of people, we're kind of going to fill them out and then we're going to decide. So I'm at the end of the call, I'm like, okay, so like, how do I know if I like get to speak or not, if I made it or not? And they're like, oh no, we already figured that out. Like we just wanted to like formally invite you, but there is no process. We just want you to come speak. So I committed to it on the spot. And then once I got off the call, I was like, dang, now I really got to do this. Cause I had never the reason why I got into audio is because so I can avoid as much public speaking, all that stuff as possible. But I guess when you get to a certain point where you kind of get competent at something, then you got to start teaching it and getting out there. So I went through with it. I did it. And that was my first speaking gig as in terms of what I do from audio. And that event was Black Pod Fest, which was an extension of the Black Pod Collective, which was founded by today's guest. Not only that, she is an entrepreneur and founder of Adode Media, a creative agency specialized in audio production and media solutions. But at the end of the day, she's just an innovator and community builder. She uses those platforms to empower underrepresented voices. So to not to delay any longer, today's guest, Ona Oghogho.
Well, thank you so much, Sidney, for thinking of me. And I'm super excited to be here and excited for this conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know you're a woman that wears many hats. So I appreciate you taking just a little bit of your time to hop on the pod and kind of tell your story. And as I mentioned before we started recording, didn't know too much about you prior to your ventures in the audio realm. So I'm curious myself. So others that are familiar or people just introduced, I'm sure they're curious as well. So you could just share a little bit about your background, what kind of work you were doing prior, and then really the inspiration for Black Pod Collective, which kind of kickstarted everything.
Yeah, most definitely. So in actuality, I always say it all started from college, honestly. I served in my college newspaper, programming board, as well as TV station, and I studied communication. But of course, being a Nigerian, my parents were like, there's no money to be made in communications. Healthcare is where you need to be at. And so out of college, I started working in healthcare and was there for about 10 years. I worked my way up into senior leadership, and I was basically the manager over revenue cycle. So the people who manage the scheduling of your appointments, the people who do your insurance verification, the people who check you in, all of those things. So I have a background in training, project management, all of those details. And honestly, all of this started in 2019 when I got laid off from my job. So I was laid off from what I thought was my dream job, but I was also kind of burnt out from being in corporate. And so I decided to start a podcast to talk to other Black women who had pretty much like left corporate America to create their own paths. And that's honestly how all this started, is that I really wanted to talk to people about their process because I didn't really want to go back to corporate. With that in mind, though, I started finding where I was running into roadblocks each time that I had a question or I was trying to learn something new about the podcasting process. And so with that in mind, I was telling a friend who had a podcast, is like, I wish there was like an organization for Black people for podcasting, because it feels like there are no Black people in podcasting. Like everything I saw from educational resources on YouTube were a bunch of white men. And it just didn't feel like it resonated with me. And so she was like, you should create it. And I was like, I said, I need the help. Why would I be the one creating it? And next thing you know, she was like, what would you call it? I was like, I would call it Black, but like, I thought I was being innovative. I was like, but Black would be BLK because, that's different. And I was like, I'd call it Black Pod Collective. And literally that night, she went home and created a mock-up logo, sent it to me and was like, Anna, just put it on Instagram and let's just see what happens. And here we are, 6 years later? And what happened was the community grew, a conference came from it, a media production company, a studio, and so much more.
Amazing. So what would you say like was the time frame into where it was like you came up with the idea and then like obviously you did the mock-up of the logo, but it's like, okay, now I have to like find out where I'm going to host this community. Like when did you start really doing how long did it take you to really start doing the real work when you saw that there was definitely an interest in it?
I'd honestly say I'm one of those people who I feel like if you're going to do something, do it full-heartedly. So out the gate, this initially was supposed to just be where I was sharing information on Instagram. And that's what it started off as. I started off just kind of sharing things that I was finding along the way. I was doing research. And then I decided, you know what, let's host a meetup. People kept saying they wanted to meet us. And so next thing you know, we started hosting meetups throughout Atlanta. And that took off pretty quickly. Next thing you knew, our last meetup of the year in 2019 had over 500 people. And I remember being completely confused because it's like, where are all of you guys coming from? But we know what 2020 did. And so it went from it being just a local Atlanta thing of where people always wanted us to come to their city. Like it was just a thing. And I think it's because of the excellence that they saw in the product that we put out. And so that's from the information that was shared. That's from the consistency. That was from the consistently showing up on Instagram. And then the email newsletter that went out on a biweekly basis. People were getting a lot of value. And then in 2020, when the world started doing what it was doing, we launched a community because people wanted to know how they could be a part of it. And that's when we launched the first paid podcast membership community. At the time, a lot of people were doing free Facebook pages, and it just wasn't something I ever had an interest in. And so out the gate, I said, you know what? People are asking for this. Let's create tiers. And at our height, we had a little over 582 paid members throughout the globe, meaning people in Japan, people in Nigeria. We had people all over the world who were members of the community.
So I'm glad you were able and you mentioned in that like the Facebook groups, the free Facebook groups, like people come up with these ideas and they're good ideas, but then, at some point, like, in order for something to really be valuable and to be mutually beneficial, to be honest, like you have to turn it into a business. So, and before you got to that point of turning it into a business, you mentioned that people were getting a lot of value out of it. Like what exactly like were you sharing, or what they learned, or what were they learning? Was it things that was like curation of stuff that's going on in the industry, or is it things that you actually created yourself to teach people? Because I know you said you were still in the learning process as well, and I would assume I wasn't a huge part of it at that time. But as you're, I feel like you're transparent enough to know, like as you're learning, yeah, you can be honest with your audience about like I don't know everything. Like this is why this is a collective. It's not me just you should do this, you should do that, and you basically just doing exactly what I'm doing. But it's a community where we can like share ideas, could be a shared space for people to share, okay, what works for somebody may not work for somebody else, but to really just kind of put everything out there, you decipher like, okay, what's going to work for you. So what were some of like the offerings that people got the most value out of originally before you decided to do the paid membership?
Honestly, all of those things can be found on our Instagram. So it's one of those things that I keep everything out there so it still exists for the world. Because of the fact that for us, it was just Instagram. It was just sharing what we were finding in the community. So what that looked like was if we found information, we shared it. What I know is that a lot of people don't have the time or the bandwidth to do research, whereas it's something I genuinely enjoy. So as I found out, whether it's industry insights, whether it was new ways of doing this, whether it was new technologies, whatever that entailed, we shared it freely on Instagram. From that, it gave people interest, which then led us to doing the events. And so I want to say I launched this in April of 2019, and our first event was a meetup in May. Then after that, we started working with local podcasters, local really industry leaders for them to host. And so, with that in mind, we were doing live events where they were sharing about their insights. One of those was like Cocktails and Dirty Discussions, I think is the name of the podcast. And she was one of the panelists. One was Wild Black. And they were basically talking about how they had monetized, how they had built their audience, how they were able to sustain. So I always say, as a community builder, it's not always your job to be the one to share the information, but it's your job to curate the experiences for that community. And so in that stage, that was mainly my experience and my focus. But let's not forget, I did have an audio background. So it's not that I was a complete novice to the industry. It was just in the grander scheme of it, because I did work at our college radio station. I've edited other people's podcasts before that point. But it was as I broke into it from a marketing perspective, from a understanding like how to build the audience. That's not something you really know as a person who just edits podcasts. And so that's where I was seeing the need for that. But a lot of our offerings that we had back then is still 100% on our Instagram page for the audience to see. And then the things behind the paywall was more so that direct access to community. So that's those monthly meetups. We would work with different organizations for them to come in and teach different things. So we partnered with the Podcast Academy. We partnered with Descript. Like, we've partnered with a lot of different organizations for them to have access to the community. And then in turn, we often got discounts for said community to be able to utilize. So in essence, your access and your paid membership, which went from about $5 to $20, gave you access to a range of things that you wouldn't have had before.
So you touched on a lot of things, but first I want to mention a stage that I'm in right now that I want to acknowledge, from basically doing like production and editing and working for other companies who do all of the concepting and the, getting the team together for production and the marketing and the analytics and all that. Like, I was kind of removed from that, but the moment I decided to do this podcast, it was definitely an awakening. It was like, okay, I've been working in this space so much that I can be honest with myself, I don't know a lot about all this other stuff. Like, all that goes into, obviously we have a team, it's easier, but to like kind of do all this stuff on your own, for somebody who's started off, like, I just like the technical and production part of it has been a challenge. And preparing for this interview, I went on your sites and just kind of get a feeling, kind of where I wanted to take the interview, but I saw that you have like the toolkits for like all these different stages. And I'm like, man, this is very affordable. I might need to invest in some of this stuff. So I can definitely see like the value, as far as what you've been doing. And especially at that stage, like, I just appreciate you like taking it seriously and being professional. And like you said, doing it, if you're going to do it, do 100 to 100%. Cause I know there's a lot of people in this space that kind of, knowing what I know now, I don't know why you would get in podcasting if you think you're just going to like strike gold. Like, it doesn't work like that in this industry. But a lot of people see things that are like hot and trending, and they kind of just, I just want to do it to, grab what I can and just make my exit basically. But you have respected your community, respected the medium, and really taken it seriously. So I definitely want to give you appreciation for that. So things are growing. You're seeing the interest there. The people are seeing the value in what you're doing. You started off small, and kind of like as things progressed and needed to evolve and become different, you did that. So I guess now we're kind of getting to the point where you had the idea to do the festival, Black Pod Fest. Like, when
It's
did
Black
you?
Pod Festival.
I'm
So I want to make
sorry. Okay,
only because of the fact that somebody does have the trademark for Podfest. So we have to be mindful about that as Black
got you.
Pod Fest.
That's a good point. Black Pod Festival. So when did you decide, like, okay, this is something I need to do, and kind of share like the process and the logistics? Because doing something in general, but then to make it be a live experience, and for it to be multiple panels and multiple days, and you have to figure out where you're going to have it. There are a lot of logistics involved. So I just want you to give like a realistic perspective of like what that takes and what all that entails for anyone who may be considering doing the same thing.
Most definitely. So something I always like to make sure people know is that I was an event planner at a certain point. So I've planned over 30 weddings to date. So I do have a background that does allow for that. So I always say, if you don't have any experience in that at all, please, for the love of God, get somebody who does. And because it shows, it will show in the experience, it will show in the product of what you are putting out there. And that's just the truth of the situation. Now, Black Pod Festival honestly came to life from the needs of the community. I always say, I don't take action unless the community asks for it, as well as if God gives me direction to do it. So the community was very vocal about like, hey, all of these workshops that we do, they're absolutely amazing, but we think it could be this and that and all of these things. And mind you, we hosted monthly workshops every month. So the thought of doing it virtual to me was like, oh, no big deal. I can easily put that together. And so my first thing was, okay, if we're doing something virtually, is there somebody we can partner with? So our very first one, we did partner with PodFest. And so that was with their virtual one back in 2020. And in just that virtual one, we had a little over 800 people who signed up just for ours. And so that let me know that one, our audience was engaged. Two, we had something good on our hands. And that meant like, curating who the speakers would be. I am very big on your network is your net worth. And so with that in mind, I had already made sure that I networked with people. So we had a panel talking about the diaspora. We had people who, at the time they had started the International Podcast Day in Africa Pod Day. We had different panel conversations. We had something on sponsorship, all of those details. And people loved it. The survey feedback was that it was absolutely amazing. Then the next year, it was like, okay, we did it with somebody as a partnership. It's time for us to do this on our own. And that first step was, okay, the cost of doing a technical live event in essence, but virtually, you have to pay for the platform, all of these things. So I said, okay, let's go ahead and find sponsors to pay for the platform itself. And at the time, StreamYard had just purchased a platform called Hopin, and they came on as sponsors, and everything else was more of like logistics. And I'm a certified project manager. I'm a certified process improvement specialist. So a lot of my experience in the corporate world has lended well for my creative services, my creative abilities, because I already built that foundation of my skill set. So in college, I was an event planner. I sat on the committee that planned homecoming, that planned all of the step shows, all of the different things that happened on campus. Coupled with in my career, I also was a certified project manager. I looked at processes. So kind of translating those skill sets over was fairly easy to do when it came down to it. So it's about making those connections. And then when you understand project management, it's looking at times, it's looking at workflows, it's looking at understanding, okay, if this session ends at this time, people are going to want time to like interact, have fun, those things. And then, of course, after 2 years of virtual, it felt like it was time to bring it to life. And that was the one that we reached out to you for you to be a part of, which I'm still very appreciative. I feel like you did a really great job. I did not know it was your first speaking engagement. And with that one, we had a total of 68 sessions. And mind you, on the hour, every hour, there were 6 sessions running at the same time. We had a little over 400 people there on Memorial Weekend. Quite frankly, we did an amazing job with just a team of 3 people. And so that's where you have to have systems in place and you have to understand logistics. If that is not your strong suit, once again, I'm a firm proponent of, I think in this industry, so many people try to do everything that they don't end up doing it with quality. And if you recognize that you don't have the skill sets, maybe that's just not for you. You can have the vision, but every vision does not mean it's meant for you to carry out. And so, what I've been blessed with is that my corporate life lended very well into my creative endeavors. And I've used to manage teams of 50 to 100 people. So managing people is a strong suit that I have. So having a team of people to support me throughout this process is also made it very much so attainable.
So, I would definitely say you definitely have a ability to break things down. But I could, in kind of confirming what you said, like when I came across you and just your brand and the things that you do is from a business point, I can tell that because in podcasting, a lot of it or creative outlets is like people are the creatives first, and then they got to try to figure out all the other stuff, the business. But for you, like, I just got this energy that like you already had the business stuff down pat, like the processes, how to monetize. As you spoke about getting sponsors, which I do want to touch on a little bit, but like knowing how to do something and how to in a business like way, in a way that's like not putting you in a hole, in the way that you can actually profit from, but also give value to what you're providing. It was just clear that you that was something you had experience in and kind of differentiated like what I was seeing in the podcast space from a lot of the other stuff, which was super good as far as creative and stuff, but they had no idea about the business aspect. And in touching on sponsors, seems like you may have had some familiarity with that as well. But can you really just kind of break down briefly, because I know we don't have time to dive super deep into everything, about like what's the best way to do that and to secure those, to make sure that you can actually like have the resources to do what you want to do?
Unfortunately, that's not something I can answer because of the fact that it's honestly one of those things where sponsorship is not a one size fits all. Like I think that's a misconception as far as I'm concerned. Everybody assumes like there's this one way to go about it, and there's not. It's based off of you, the individual. It's based off of your show. It's based off of what's in alignment. Like we've had clients who, because I know we've talked about of BLK Pod Collective, but currently what I do for a living full time is I produce other people's show. I own a studio, and we work with a lot of creators who, for example, we have real estate clients. They started off thinking, okay, it's other agents and stuff like that. And well, it changed. So we have law firms, closing attorneys, all of these different people who now sponsor their podcasts based off of their target market. So there's no one size fits all because of the mere fact that oftentimes people are thinking they pigeonhole themselves in. This is the process for, it's not, it's just not. I've seen people get sponsorships just at an event. They're talking to someone and they're like, oh, I think this would be good. But I also think sometimes people think too big out the gate. You haven't shown the ROI, you haven't shown any of those details. When in actuality, if you start local and you start small with the laundromat that's opening down the street, with the library, like whatever that may look like, there's ways to go about it. Like I know when we were doing BLK Pod Collective, the podcast, which is a how-to podcast for podcasters, one of the things that we did is we literally worked with libraries, we worked with other co-working spaces, and we had QR codes there. And how we went about it was that, hey, if people are utilizing your podcast studio or utilizing your space and they have questions about podcasting, they can utilize this QR code and it basically walks them through. It's instructional. Well, we got a lot of downloads from that. Well, from getting those downloads, then we said, hey, your audience is clearly here. We would love for you to buy ad space to kind of tell them about the services that you already offer. What are some of your pain points? And I think oftentimes we focus more on ourselves versus of the pain points of the person that we're in essence asking for money from.
Mm. Okay. So I guess the biggest thing for me is thinking outside of the box, kind of having more of an open-minded approach and really recognizing like where you are and where your audience is and serving them, as opposed to this self-serving is just like, it's kind of an ego boost. Like, yeah, I got this big brand to sponsor me, whatever, but it's like, if it's not in alignment, first of all, it's going to be short-lived because it's not going to be ROI in it for them. And at the end of the day, like whatever your mission and vision is to serve, to help other people. But then once you get into it just feels good to say that I partner with such and such when it's not really serving your audience. It seems counterproductive. So, okay, so we're making progress. We've done the first. You did the collective, just posted on Instagram, the community, the free community, paid community, virtual Black Pod Festival, and then now in person. And how many years did you do in person?
So we did 2 virtual and 2 in person thus far.
Okay. So things are going well with that. But I saw on your social media that you posted, and I want you to go into it because this is something I kind of want to drive home on my episodes too, is that you can definitely be successful doing things, and there's a lot of work that goes into building anything, obviously. And there are seasons where you have to sacrifice and really grind it out just to get things off the ground. But then there comes a time where you may want a little more balance in life. You don't want to be working nonstop. When you're young, you can kind of cut corners of like, oh, I'm not getting enough sleep. I'm not eating the way I need to do. Like, just like kind of have like a holistic approach to like your life. Like, you don't want to just be good in business, have a lot of money, and then neglecting other areas. And I saw that you mentioned that you were getting burnt out from kind of doing all this. So can you kind of share what it's like to build something that's successful, and maybe you can continue to live and do things the way that you've been doing it, and it will continue to be successful, but then also finding a balance of like, okay, like maybe some things aren't, you maybe aren't meant to do it forever. Sometimes you need to take breaks. Sometimes you need to step back and reevaluate like what things I want to do, and where I want to go from here, even though something may be successful. So you can you share like your experience with realizing you had burnout, and like what you feel like the next appropriate steps were for you to eliminate it and prevent it from happening again?
Honestly, I think it's one of those things of, life changes. I think to me, Black Pod Collective, Black Pod Festival, those are my past. I have to think of what is in my present. My present is I employ over 25 people. I run a production company that works with Coca-Cola, Revolt, iHeart, and then some. I own a 2,000 square foot studio that sees anywhere from 50 to 100 people in 1 month. And all of those things were still going on while running Black Pod Collective and Black Pod Festival. And so over time, first I launched the collective membership. Membership is still, as much as people think it's a collective community, it's a lot of people who want access to you, the person. I can't on one side charge $350 an hour for somebody to consult with me at Adode Media, but then on the collective side, you're paying $20 a month and you're picking my brain. Along with that, it becomes a lot to juggle. So in essence, Monday through Friday, 9 to 5, I was doing Adode Media, and then I would get done at 5 o'clock, and then 5 to 11 o'clock, I'm now doing Black Pod Collective and Black Pod Festival. That was all the time, and that's not sustainable. And so it sounds cute to say I'm a 4-time founder, but at the same token, that's not really sustainable. So as much as I love the collective, as much as I love what I built on that side of the world, as I was growing Adode Media and growing my agency and growing my team and growing the studios, like we have expanded the studio year over year, and expanded our offerings year over year. We started off as just a production company. Now we do creative marketing. So we do web design, we do graphic design, we do social media marketing, and so much more. Well, I can't lead a team of 25 over here effectively while still trying to lead a community of 500 people. At some point, I have to ask myself, ultimately, what do I want? Black Pod Collective did not make me money. Like, I always like to make sure people understand that. It sustained itself, but as far as like, did I take a cut out of that? No, it was a passion project. But I do this full time. This is not my side project. This is not my, something fun to do. And there are people who pay and support their families based off of the work that we do here. And so when you start recognizing that level of responsibility, I was burnt out because I was trying to have one foot in my agency and one foot still in my past, in essence, of how I got here, because I felt I felt endeared to it because this is how I got the opportunity. But in actuality, how I got the opportunity, if I'm being honest, is off of my own hard work. Like that's honestly what it boiled down to. It's not that anybody gave me a leg up. It's none of that. It's off of the hard work that I did at BLK Pod Collective, BLK Pod Festival, that I then translated to hard work here at Adode Media. So from a burnout perspective, I think for me, it was something had to go. It could not be that I was running basically 4 different entities as a single individual. And BLK Pod Collective did not make enough money to have employees to support that. And when I look at other people's conferences now that are charging 600 and something dollars, and that's for a general admissions ticket. Our general admissions was probably $79 and our larger ticket was $259. And as much as I wanted to make things accessible for our community, accessible can sometimes also mean draining of you because somebody has to basically pour those resources in. I tell the story of in the first in-person one, it cost me $25,000 out of my own pocket. That's money that could have gone back into my business that actually makes me money. And so when your accountant is sitting you down to say, hey, this like side project that you're doing, do you want to turn it into a nonprofit? Like, what are we doing here? Like, we're pouring money into it. The team that put together the graphics for BLK Pod Festival is the Adode Media team. The team that worked on logistical items is the Adode Media team. So in essence, I'm paying my staff in one company off of my own money because BLK Pod Collective didn't have money to pay the staff. And so at some point, the burnout came because it was just like, this is not sustainable. And I had to make the decision of what does this now look like? And what matters most is making sure the people that work here are well taken care of and that they have a leader who's able to be of present mind and fully present in the company to help it grow. And I'm happy I made that decision because we've made leaps and bounds since doing so.
So yeah, I'm super. It's refreshing to know that you have and had that perspective. Because me and my friends joke a lot about we have like these universal life rules, and for mine is like for me, my top one is you're gonna pay one way or another. It might not be money, it might not it could be time, it could be a lot of different things, but there are no free rides in life. You can't finesse life. You're going to pay in some shape, form, or facet. So the sooner you can identify and like, okay, I'm something's off, something's not working on the outside. Is cute, is all these things, but for me behind closed doors, like I'm really going through it because my partner, she had in the point of her business, she sold online products and she was a designer and like but the way she really made money was selling things online. And yes, she had a lot of followers, she was making money, but having to pack these orders and send all this stuff out and do whatever, like people don't see that stuff behind the scenes. So you gotta make shifts and you gotta make adjustments. So I'm glad you were able to do that. And you've been mentioning Adode a lot, and I didn't kind of let you officially like describe what you all do there and when that kind of spawned and took into form. So can you share that? And then I have some really more specific questions about, as far as working with clients, because originally I'm sure it was like the podcast in terms of a marketing thing, but sometimes you got to do a lot of convincing to really get people to see what's the benefit of doing it long term. Like I briefly mentioned earlier, podcast is not something you do as a money grab. It's a long term play, and I'm sure you have to communicate that to your clients so they can continue to see the value in it as well. So can you share a little bit more about what you do at Adode?
Most definitely. I've been mentioning a lot because it's like, I think we've been focusing a lot on my past, and I'm very much so like, let's live in the present. And so Adode Media is a full service creative agency, and we specialize in podcast production, video marketing, branding and design, as well as overall holistic lead generation. The thing about us is we started off as a podcast production company, and we really just expanded from there because oftentimes our clients would see that we were really good at this element, and they're like, can you just? And I was like, well, instead of just can you just, let's just go ahead and add that as a service offering and expand from there. Right now, our team consists of video editors, graphic designers, social media marketers, production assistants, videographers, copywriters, audio engineers. We are a expansive team, and I'm just excited for the growth. And now, the thing I'll say to answer your question is, thankfully, I don't have to convince clients. We have three different departments here at Adode Media. One department is what we call our enterprise department, and that consists of the Revolts, the Cokes, the Emory universities, pretty much our larger corporate clients. I focus in on those clients solely, and oftentimes they have campaigns and campaign dollars that they are trying to pull to life. And it's typically going to be a large, I always say they come in for 2-3 days. A lot of them fly in to work with us. And from there, we're going to kind of really crazy production day, but we're going to get it all done over the course of a week to make sure we have everything we need. And then our back end team takes it from there to put together the remaining assets, whether that's the editing, the thumbnail designs, the graphics, the banners, all those details. Our next department is what we call our brand department, and that's for small organizations, nonprofits. That's for entrepreneurs. Now, for them, they're typically utilizing the podcast, or honestly, the content we create for them, as their content for marketing, whether that's on their website, their newsletter, their social media. We basically work with them month over month to make sure they have the content that they need. Some of these people are thought leaders within their industry, provosts within universities, who are basically utilizing the podcast as some of them as their newsletter. Like, we work with a hospital here who their hospital CEO does a weekly newsletter, but we technically record it once a quarter. They do a weekly podcast that basically goes out almost like a newsletter format to the employees. And then lastly, our last department is for creators. And the reason I call it departments is because there's different people assigned to each one of these departments. Our creator department is a little bit more fluid. A lot of times there are people who are just utilizing the studio. They're just looking for a place to bring their content to life. If they have a special guest, they might pay for us to edit it. But the studio space and those digital resources you saw. So you saw how we had toolkits and all of those things. They typically can't afford our $30 to $50, $60,000 budget, but I want to make sure, because I started off as an independent creator, that they still have tools available to them so that this way they can build from there. And so that's where we have the YouTube videos that are on our website. We also have the digital resources, and as well as the studio. So that's what I call our low-hanging fruit. But we still love to work with creators. But I always think it's important to know, if your goal is to work with creators, your goal is not to make money. It's just the truth of the situation.
Yeah. Oh man. I'm kind of just going down my Rolodex of man, and like you said, in this space, like I kind of was in the same boat as you. Like, when I first got into the space, it was just, editing for people, recording out of their office, like I'm doing now. You're in a bit more of a fancy setup and all that stuff, but hopefully we can all get to there at some point. But for some people, they have no desire to. It's like, I have a business, or I'm a solopreneur, or whatever the term is. And, like, I have a message and I want to get it out. And, I think sometimes we've gotten to the space where it's just like, oh, this is a marketing. If you want to convert and you want to do this and have it lead to business. And some people are just like, man, I just want to do a podcast. Like, I thought it was cool. I don't want to spend too much time on it. I do want it to sound a little polished, so I'll throw you a couple of dollars to do it. Like, that's how I got in the game, doing stuff like that. And then mostly like interview style stuff. And then you get exposed, like podcasting evolves, and then all these true crime shows come out, and it's just these audio documentaries, and it's just like more sophisticated ways of podcasting. And I'm like, I want to work on that type of stuff. So I, started putting together my own stuff, finding a client here or there who's like, this is all I got, but I want to do a more creative style of a podcast. And then, I got my job with Frequency, where my first foray into like branded podcast and these budgets, and I'm seeing these numbers, and I'm like, oh, this is where I should have been at the whole time. So you get exposed to that world. And then it's like, you're kind of trying to find a balance, because you do have an appreciation for how you got into it. But at the end of the day, especially for me, like somebody who does editing and mixing, and I don't have an agency, it's really just me at this point. Like, I can only do so much editing and mixing and all this stuff in a day. Like, I have a limited amount of time. So I'm just gonna try to make the most per project, so it's more worth my time. And then you get to the point where you start a podcast. I'm only 10 episodes in, but maybe by the time I get to 100, it's like I may want to go the route you are. Like I want to start an agency because I've done this for 100 episodes and beyond, and it's a lot of value when I do. It's just so many different ways you can go. So I'm kind of glad that you know what the bread and butter is. You know what the top tier is, you know, the levels, but then you also incorporate all of those so you can serve multiple different people or brands or organizations where they're at. So I'm glad you were able to figure out that kind of how you want to run your business in that capacity. But then also the question I want to lead into is obviously the goal of a business to make money, but all money is not good money. And you have a lot of opportunities, especially when you get to the level that you are, where you're not always searching for work. Like it can come in your lap. People are wanting to work with you, but you can't say you can't say yes to everyone because of workload and because of just lack of alignment. So, how do you really? What are the criteria you based on? Money is an aspect of it, but there are other things to consider as well to whether you will or will not take on projects.
I think oftentimes, if you're a solopreneur, that's really a conversation. But when you have a team, there's typically somebody who it's better alignment with on team. So you're not really working with me. I remember I said I only work with the enterprise clients. Other people, I'm not typically the one involved in your day to day. So we may not be aligned, but I'm 95% sure there's somebody on my team who you're better alignment with, and I will assign that to them. And that's part of that intake process. So I always say, like, there's a difference between being a solopreneur and then being a business owner and being an entrepreneur. Those are three different distinctions, but I think everybody just kind of calls themselves the same thing. But as a business owner, think about it like this, like, you can't go to Nike and Nike say, "Oh, I'm not selling you shoes because you're not in alignment with me." Like, it's not the same concept. It's one, illegal. Like, if somebody were to come to say, "I want services from you," you're not able to just be like, well, you have to actually give them genuine reason. Now, if it's that you want to work with me specifically, well, me specifically, there's a certain dollar amount. And so then that's different. If you don't qualify based off of the dollar amount, then of course. But as far as like alignment, as long as you're not like out here worshiping the devil or anything like that, and you're not like a KKK supporter, like, there are things from a moral perspective. But as far as like from a creativity perspective, there there's 25 people that work here. There's more than enough people who can help you meet your vision. And I think we have more of those conversations around alignment when you are working with someone one-on-one, and that's just not what I do. And so and even when you're working with corporations, you'll typically have a point of contact. So yes, I'm involved from like, we have team huddles to kind of talk about like, okay, what's the status? What's going on? I give my insights, but it's technically the account managers and the producers, it's their responsibility to really bring that project to fruition. It being in alignment with me and whether it works for me and my schedule, that's not how this works. And so I don't typically fall into that realm, if I'm being honest.
Okay. Well, yeah, I appreciate your clarification on that. Because a lot of people, I guess, especially with people I've interviewed, like I actually had another interview today. I was talking to a guy. He's like a composer, sound designer, and he's kind of doing everything. So that stuff kind of matters more. But when you actually have like, do what you do, have an agency and employees and things like that, you're not as hands-on like with each individual project unless you start getting into like the enterprise tier that you mentioned. So that makes a lot of sense. And speaking of like having a team and like you said, you're sure that somebody in the team that you feel like is more fit for this particular client or that particular client, you'll assign them to them. So like, what are some top criteria you look for as far as bringing people on? Are these people that you have some type of connection to? Do you, just like, okay, well, I have this role, you can apply. Like, what is your process for like making sure you have the right people in your company?
I do not hire anybody I know. I'm sure you saw my face when you said that. because one, I think I'm even flabbergasted at the thought. But no, for me, it's honestly one of those things where I believe in one, nurturing talent. So I've had people who they have no experience in podcasting. They have no experience in this realm at all. But at the end of the day, I see their ability to work hard. And as a person whose background was in training and project management, I know one of my big strong suits is the ability to train you to get to that point. So one of our production assistants, like for example, she was a makeup artist, a content creator. She had no video experience. Now she's able to run the studio by herself, run the switcher board, run the cameras, all of those details. And so for me, I can't train you on how to be a good person. I can't train you on how to be a good communicator. I can't train you on how to be hardworking. I cannot train you on certain fundamental things that I do think is starting to be missing in our workforce. So if I see that you have those skill sets, everything else I can train you on because I had to learn those things myself. I didn't know video. I didn't know a lot of these things. And so I don't hire in the same way as probably most people. Most people are looking for those who like have all the skill sets. Yes, there's certain roles, but like our lead video editor, he started off as a documentary filmmaker. Now he understands this like nobody's business because we also have our own style of how we do things. And having a training and project management background, we have an SOP document. We have an extensive onboarding and training process. Everything we do here is documented in some capacity, whether that's an SOP, whether that's a workflow document. And so it's one of those things where I do think on some levels, business has been a little easier for me because of my corporate experience. And so corporate America gave me the foundation, and I've been able to utilize that to build my business on top of. And so I used to train new employees that started off in the hospital system. That was literally how I started. Well, that now helps me train my own team, make sure that they're set up in the right way. My job was process improvement, meaning I used to look at where there was breakdowns in the process and the systems and how to optimize it. I have done those same things in the business. So when I'm hiring people, I'm looking for those who have the drive, and that's more important to me than the actual skill set. But at the same token, you still need to be able to like take direction and do things well. And I'm a firm believer of I'm going to hire quick and fire quick. I know people are like slow to hire, quick to fire. No, because the interview process, everybody's going to be their best version of themselves. And everybody can do everything until it's time to actually do it. So I'd rather just hire you and see what you do. And if it's in alignment, then it works. If it's not, we see if we can train through it. If you can't, then you leave. And so I think oftentimes people are very delayed in hiring and also very apprehensive in firing. But when you're not a big corporation, you cannot afford to have bad apples in seats
Mm,
for too long.
right. That I didn't look at it from that perspective, but yeah, hi. It was reminded this scene from Jamie Foxx where he was like, hire your ass, fire your ass. But like, yeah, I guess you just got to get people to jump in and see what they can do. If it works, it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't. It's business at the end of the day. Obviously, you can do that. You don't have to be an a-hole about letting people go. And, I'm sure you do. That's, people think of firing. They think of this big scene where you're walking in, you ripping out people's cords from their computer and kicking them out the door. But that's not how it works in reality. So sometimes those things are necessary. So I definitely get it. So we're getting to the end here, but I guess overarching, like another reason why I wanted to start the podcast is not just to get experience from people that's in the industry, but to be a resource and inspiration for people wanting to get into the industry, no matter what capacity. So what would be just your, I guess, top tips for someone who just maybe getting introduced to the world of audio, whether it be podcasting, music, in whatever capacity, and like, I don't know, just like, I kind of guess general mindset things, or like what would just be like, what would you recommend they do when they just jump into it?
Research and read as much as possible. I think in this day and age, the art of research and really understanding a process before jumping into it is lost. I think oftentimes people want to jump off of the plane and then build it like build their parachute as they're free falling. And I think there's certain things that you can do to cushion that along the way. And to me, that's the research and understanding. The second thing I would say is understand like what lane do you want to be in? You know, like right now we're able to expand and do a lot more things. And that's because there's a team supporting this. But when it was just, well, it was never just me by myself. Out the gate, I hired two people. But when it was just the three of us, I knew that we couldn't do the graphics. Like we had an audio engineer, we had a show note writer, and myself. And I knew then I couldn't do graphics. Like there's certain pieces that were not included because of the fact that realistically speaking, it wasn't the strong suit. And I think your reputation is always going to be what's important. So never just try to grab the money. And I think that's what I see a lot of is that people just want to grab the money that's out there. So they commit to things that they know they do not have the skill set to do. And I would highly recommend that you build a portfolio and you build a name that is synonymous with excellence and synonymous with going above and beyond. So like I remember the first website I built. I remember I did it for free because I was like, you know what? I've never done it before, but it's something I want us to see if we can do. The client absolutely loved it. And still like, I think they paid me $500 because they're like, oh my God, you deserve something. Well, now we build websites that are like $10,000. And so it's one of those things of you have to be willing to like put yourself aside when you're starting in something new, because it's easy to think to yourself, I'm an expert in this piece. But if you've never done the other pieces, you have to kind of humble yourself. So those would be like my advice is like be humble, do the research, as well as be realistic.
Okay. Yeah, I'm glad because again, you go to that, you have that balance between, knowing what you're good at, charging accordingly, but then staying away from the things that you aren't good at. Right now, that's supposed to say you might not, have the capacity to learn it or bring on someone who does know. Me growing within a sports background and playing sports my whole life is like people have natural gifts and talents, things that they're just better at. I'm a tall guy, but I wasn't jumping out of the gym. I wasn't, I didn't have a grown man body when I was 14. Like some guys have that. It's just like you're strong and athletic and that's just what you do. Like, nah, for me, it was like I understood the game. I had skill. I could shoot. I could play in different styles of offense. I could take a back seat. I didn't necessarily have to be the person taking all the shots. So there are other areas that you can be stronger in that may not be as like sexy or as appealing to the outside, but at the end of the day, they're still valuable. So, but they want to point that out as well. So we're getting to the last segment of the show. I know we've been basically talking more business and journey, but I'd love to end on a much lighter note, just to get an idea as far as your taste, and hopefully we share some similarities in these answers, or you can put me on to something that I'm not too familiar with. So first question, favorite album or albums? Because the original question was album, but people love so many different things and sometimes it's hard to narrow it down. So if you have a short list, I'm willing to compromise.
My favorite album, so I'm an R&B girl, like through and through, and my favorite R&B group is Silk. And I will honestly have to say is their Silk Time in 2003 album or their Tonight album in 1999, which I was all of a baby, but that's not the point. It's still my favorite album. So don't you worry about how old I am.
Silk. Okay. That's a new one.
He said yeah, I'm like an old lady on here,
I mean, no, I mean a lot of my answers come from around that era as well. So I'm not gonna judge you based on that. But and I have a deep appreciation for the R&B music of that era. Just not that particular group or project as much. So I'm gonna do my due diligence and I'm gonna see if that holds up or not. So I'm gonna get back to you on that one. All right. Next favorite music producer or producers?
I probably don't have one. I don't think I have one.
So you're more of a which is I was like this early on, just more like an artist. You didn't even realize there was somebody who actually made the music.
I knew there was somebody who made it, but I feel like I don't think about them. I know that sounds horrible as a producer myself, But it's the same way that I have clients who like people absolutely love their podcast, but they don't know that I make the podcast. They don't know that I'm the one writing the questions. They don't know any of that. And so I think it's the same concept. I don't think I've ever, wow, now I feel like a little bit of an asshole. I don't think I've ever actually taken the time to go look at who is the producer for some of my favorite songs.
Oh, that's cool. You know, I some people have that level of curiosity. I definitely was one, but it's not for everybody. So I get it. So we'll just move on. So next, what your favorite film score or soundtrack?
Lord, you're asking me things that I'm like, hold on. My favorite soundtrack is probably actually, I do have a favorite soundtrack. Okay, so something to note about me is I like comedies and stuff like that. I'm very big on like my family says I'm into white people comedy, and just to give you some context. And so I really it's Katherine Heigl was in it.
Knocked Up. Is it Knocked Up? The Ugly Truth?
No, Katherine Heigl. Hold on. I know
she was in both of those movies. So and I had like a little, you know,
you had a
crush on her. So
because I was like, how did you just pick that up out of nowhere?
I'm a nerd when it comes to stuff like that. You may not have known before, but now you know. I know random stuff about
27 Dresses and it was the Ugly Truth. Ugly Truth.
Yeah, The Ugly Truth. Yeah, that was the second one I said. Yeah, with the guy from 300 and Law Abiding Citizen. That was a good movie.
It was a good movie, but I really love that soundtrack.
Yeah. It did really because it was a simple movie, but the soundtrack really did elevate it and bring it to life. So I agree. That's it. Good answer. Okay, last one. Then I'm letting you off the hook. Favorite TV theme song?
It might be Golden Girls.
Ooh.
Thank you for being.
Let's go with that. Man, that's one that I had not thought of in
cause think about
asking these questions, but it's definitely classic.
It's a classic. Like my friend's birthday was just like last week, and at the end it was a karaoke birthday party, and so at the end she sung the whole like "Thank you for being a friend," and everybody like knew it, and everybody got into it. I don't know a lot of like theme songs that everybody just knows internationally at that. Like I'm Nigerian. And my mother even like, you know, my grandmother even knows it, which is saying a lot because she's old.
But yeah, that's definitely a classic. Shout out to Golden Girls, man. First reference on the pod. Well, yeah, I think that's it. I definitely have a good idea of your taste, and in your life, music producers don't exist. So,
don't try to get me jumped in the streets, okay? Like, let's start off there. That's not what I said.
No, I'm not. I'm just playing with you. It's not it's not something you're going to seek out. So,
yes.
I respect it, but yeah, I think that's it. We're pretty much done. But before we end completely, can you please share where everybody can connect with you, find you, follow you digitally on the internet and social media and all that type of stuff? Please share.
Most definitely. So you can find me everywhere at Ona Oghogho. So that's my Instagram, my personal website. And from there, you'll be able to find my brands from Adode Media, Adode Studios, BLK Pod Collective, BLK Pod Festival, all the things. I always just say Ona Oghogho is the hub for all things.
All right. Well, I appreciate you joining us, Agana, and I appreciate you sharing and diving into the present. But as you said, really focusing, I'm sorry, diving on the past, but really focusing more on the present. So appreciate you coming on, everybody, for listening and tuning in. And yeah, we'll catch you on the next episode. Thank you for joining us on today's episode. Please don't forget to subscribe to the show and leave us a review. If you'd like to work with me or connect, please go to soundbysid.com and schedule a call. There you can also check out the full list of productions I've worked on. If you'd like to connect on social media, my handle is soundbysid.com on Twitter and Instagram, and I'm Sidney Evans on LinkedIn. Don't forget to follow Beyond the Threshold on Instagram as well. I'll catch you on the next episode.